guys hear me? Yep. I don't think you need any more introduction, but this following on that is mainstream adoption through real-world asset tokenization. And we've got Nicholas Viola from Coinbanks, Henri de Jong, who you just met from Quantos, Simon from Archex, and Elle Ward from Control Alt, and our own Fede to moderate. So take it away.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. So, welcome everyone. I like the definition of moderator. I think Italian and moderator is a bit of an oxymoron. So I don't know whose idea this was to have me here, but if this panel descends into a dinner table shouting match, you can blame Stacy. So anyway, we are here to talk about real-world assets and mainstream adoption. I personally never like this label of RWA. I think it's too narrow. In my mind, anything which is valuable and meaningful belongs to the real world. So financial products, property, art, music, data, information, this all belongs to the real world. So I'm not sure what's left out there, which is some unreal assets or real assets, but we let the other panels figure out. We got all the good stuff here. And in terms of mainstream adoption, there's my vision has always been that all financial instruments, anything of value, will be tokenized. And by that I mean represented as a token or as a smart contract on a public blockchain. And for a number of reasons, which maybe we'll touch some of them on this panel. And it's clearly a journey. And this view, I think, is shared probably by the people on this panel, probably not by everyone in this room, certainly not by everyone in traditional financial markets, in traditional financial services. It's still a minority view. So I think it's going to be interesting to see today from this panel, where are we on this journey? What are the main themes you guys are focusing on, the key aspects that you think are interesting, some concrete examples of the great work you guys have been doing, and possibly some challenges and some obstacles that we are finding on this journey. And then if anyone has any question they wish to ask, I think we can have a 5-10 minutes Q&A in the end. So I will probably start with the most important real-world asset we have, which is the euro. It's the money that you need to buy everything else and to make every tokenization actually work rather than being some exercise. Over to you, Henri. I think I would leave the panel to introduce themselves.
I don't consider myself the most important person in this panel.
Well,
but again, thank you for the information. Quantos is quite an old company. Yeah? So we founded the company in 2014, and we entered into the payment industry, I would say, in 2016. At that time, we did a lot of projects, especially IoT, machine-to-machine payments, with real big companies, including Airbus, UniCredit, BASF, Porsche. And these companies cannot handle cryptocurrencies, because it doesn't fit. And if they could, their auditors couldn't handle the crypto. So we looked into stablecoin solutions, but if you look at the end of the day, stablecoins also don't work for corporates. Yeah? So you have the counterparty risk. It's not money. It's very cumbersome to keep that in their bookkeeping systems. So if you really want to do payments on chain, you need regulated money. And this is a bit of a long story, but we looked 1-2 years for partners that could provide us the required license to issue money on blockchain, and we didn't find anyone. So at the end of the day, Gaston, my co-founder, and Nick, our CEO, he's the only one with a tie in this room, we decided to apply for an e-money license ourselves. And in the discussions we had with our clients, they say, don't go for the easy regulations. Don't go to Malta, don't go to the Baltics. It's a bit like if you sell peanuts, you get monkeys as clients. So go for a AAA regulator. And so we entered the discussion with the Dutch Central Bank. And in the beginning, they were very skeptic. But you know, during the discussions, and especially training them on blockchain, explaining them how you can build we call it a virtual private payment network, so a closed loop ecosystem on a public blockchain infrastructure, it became quite a cooperation. Yeah, so, and that resulted in an e-money license end of last year, which we meanwhile passported through the European Economic Area. So we are now in the fortunate position to issue digital euros on-chain, and these euros are compliant with the upcoming MiCAR regulation. So in Europe, we will have from next Monday on quite a tough regulation on crypto assets, and we are compliant with that. That enables us to facilitate a delivery versus payment transaction, as we did now with Archex and Aberdeen and Algorand. So what you can really trade financial regulated products with digital money. And there's no issue about being compliant or not anymore.
Maybe I can add to that, not just trade, but also receive all the cash flows in tokenized fiat, in tokenized euros, which is important because otherwise, with traditional kind of initial tokenizations where the fiat stays off-chain, you are not really solving much because you are simply doubling your efforts. You need to have two ledgers, one for the asset, one for the cash. Here you are combining the two and you're getting a lot of efficiency from that.
So
Sorry.
yeah, I think today this is the holy grail of the blockchain industry, facilitating these kind of transactions, not using a smart contract. Yeah, so if you speak with financial industries, they're looking for risk mitigation, and a smart contract is a risk.
Adds to the complexity. Yeah, and on Algorand, for most things, you don't need a smart contract. You can do atomic transactions as a protocol primitive and create ASAs like the EuroD is as a type of transactions effectively.
Yeah.
Simon,
well, you are our partner in this.
Well, yeah, maybe I'll fill in sort of our side of the story as well. I mean, I gave you a little brief intro earlier, but I guess our backstory is that we kind of got interested in crypto in, I don't know, 2016, 2017, and actually got more excited about the underlying blockchain, DLT technology, concepts like tokenization, and the belief that it had the potential to completely disrupt and revolutionize all traditional financial markets as well as sort of the crypto space. You know, crypto is hugely exciting, but if you kind of look at the overall market cap of the whole of the crypto world, it's less than Apple, you know, a single stock, you know. So the potential for real-world asset tokenization, if you look at the complete size of the financial market systems globally, you know, we've sized it at $1.7 quadrillion. That's, you know, $1,700 trillion. It's a massive market opportunity. But for that to happen, we kind of realized that someone needed to build the regulated institutional-grade products and services and infrastructure to build a bridge, if you like, between the cool crypto world and the regulated institutional space. And that's really what Archax is. So we're regulated in the UK as an exchange, a broker, and a custodian. We can handle crypto. We have a crypto market, but we can handle regulated tokenized assets. And that's why the transaction we've done today or in the last day or so is really exciting. We work with Aberdeen. We also work with BlackRock. We're tokenizing money market funds. Money market funds are really interesting. You might ask why tokenize them, but I'll answer that question later maybe, or I'll be going on too long. But once they're in token form, there's a lot you can do with it. And the transaction that we did today is a good example of a sort of institutional type transaction all on chain, using fiat effectively on chain, using a very traditional instrument like a money market fund on chain, and moving it between ourselves and allowing peer-to-peer transactions as well. So it's been a really exciting project, and the first of many, I think. So very, very excited from our side.
Excellent. Who wants to go next? Maybe Elle?
I can go. So I guess kind of probably key for our story is that Matt Ong, our CEO and founder, he really started Control because he was working at, said financial institutions. Obviously, have come a long way now since he left to set up Control, but working in structuring alternatives, but yet himself couldn't have the access to do that. So kind of enter the birth of Control. So essentially, we're on a mission to open up opportunity in tokenized assets. So how do we do that? We sit as a conduit in between. So whether you're an asset holder or you're looking to offer tokenized asset investing to your customers, we're the conduit and infrastructure to do that, and or both. So I guess relevant for this conversation, one of the first things we did on Algorand was that we tokenized one of the first properties in the UK, which was a kind of really fundamental for us in really showing the opportunity and scale. Any Brits in the audience will understand how emotive property ownership is. You could have achieved everything in the world, but until you've got a property, you haven't made it. So I think that's a really interesting use case for this conversation. On the other side, we've just announced a partnership with Liv Bank, who are part of Emirates NBD in the Middle East, which essentially is opening up opportunities for their end customers, their retail investors, to access tokenized assets. So imagine opening up your banking app. I want to invest in tokenized assets powered by Control, and that is a user experience that we are creating.
Excellent.
Please go on.
Okay, is my mic on? I don't hear. Okay. Yes. Okay, Coinbanks is a B2B company with a Latin American company with active presence in 5 countries, those to be Uruguay, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, and El Salvador. We connect financial institutions, traditional financial institutions, through the payment technology of the future, that to be through Web3 contracts, through smart contracts, and Web3 applications. And we basically offer to our customers crypto capabilities. We allow them to buy, hold, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies. We have e-money licenses and fiat RAMs on each country, all of these countries that I just mentioned. And we have our tokenization engine that allows us to tokenize any kind of valuated asset. So that's kind of our ecosystem, and when it comes to tokenize real-world assets, we are like the only payment service processor on chain in Argentina. We are the only digital correspondent in Colombia on chain. So, and that's all over Algorand, and so that's been great for us too.
That's great. Let me pick up on something that Elle just said. You said the customer of the retail bank you're working with might decide to buy tokenized assets. In my experience, it's the customer doesn't really know or care about whether the asset is tokenized or not. They just want the asset. Yeah. So to what extent are you looking to abstract away the kind of the underlying technology and just provide a better service?
Completely. It's such an interesting conversation, I think, since Control has launched. We have reiterated our language so many times, from alternative assets, digital assets, tokenized assets, and everything back in between. We spoke about it before. I looked to the previous startup that I was at, which launched an open banking product when that was introduced. And this was this really new thing, and now we use open banking every day, and we don't really think about it. And in the run-up to it, it was this kind of big hoo-ha, like, okay, what conversations do we need to have? What content do we need to make? People were going on kind of mainstream media to talk about the conversation. And then kind of now we interact with open banking day to day. I mean, it's probably a bit reductive to compare open banking to tokenization, but I think it's interesting to explore how much, when it comes to kind of mass market within certain contexts, the conversation maybe needs to be about tokenization, especially if we think to a kind of end investor more on the retail front. You know, they want to invest in an exciting asset that's important to them because of the yield, because it's a passion-based asset, for example. So yeah, that's what we're definitely trying to negotiate at the moment, and I think it really depends on who we're speaking to. But in the last year, the conversation has moved so rapidly anyway in terms of the mainstream. So let's see where we are in a year's time.
And Simon, you alluded to some of the advantages. Do you want to go a bit deeper?
I think your question was kind of, you know, people don't care whether it's tokenized or not, they just want the asset, and I think that's really true. And it comes back to what I said earlier, why tokenize a money market fund? Okay, well, there's two main reasons. One is democratization, and the other is innovation. So look at democratization first. Okay, when you know, in the traditional financial markets world, you can invest in money market funds, so that's nothing new in a way. And when you invest in like an Aberdeen money market fund, depending on the size of investment, you get a better price. So to get in at the lowest share class, the lowest price point, typically 10 basis points, is a minimum of $75 million investment. So it's a sizable investment to get that price point. You know, our relationships with Aberdeen and BlackRock, they give us that lowest price point access, but you can invest through us at $5,000. So in terms of democratization, suddenly there's a whole swathe of people who couldn't get access to a money market fund at that kind of level suddenly get access. So it's attractive to the community because you're getting access to a money market fund. Money market funds are important at the moment because they generate a yield. You get a 5% yield. You don't want to be sitting on cash or stable coin and getting nothing. You want to put it somewhere safe and yield generating, so the money market fund is interesting. So we're democratizing access to it. The second thing is innovation. You know, once you have it in token form, there's things you can do with it. I mean, the example of this press release earlier today, the peer-to-peer nature of the transaction, that's quite interesting. You couldn't do that with a traditional investment in a money market fund. But also, you can use it as collateral. So we've got various banks looking at using money market funds to post overnight margin payments to pay their clients. So suddenly, instead of using cash and coming in and out of the fiat banking system, you're moving a yield-bearing regulated instrument as a form of collateral between different parties. So that's in the innovation side. But then go another step and look at DeFi. Look at places like Aave, where you can borrow and lend against assets. We've taken a fork of Aave. We're developing a sort of a regulated, if you like, version. So suddenly you can go out into the DeFi world and borrow and lend against these assets. So the whole idea of securities lending, which is massive in the traditional financial markets world, leveraging what's being pioneered and innovated in the DeFi space, doing things more efficiently and more broadly, it becomes hugely exciting. So I think, you know, once you have a real-world asset in token form, not only does it provide a greater community access, it also provides the chance to innovate and do things differently, which you really couldn't do before. So.
And what I would like to add to that is you can get in and out of real-world assets within less than 3 seconds.
Yep.
At no cost and 24/7.
Yeah.
And if you look to the traditional markets, we have to wait until Wall Street opens.
Yeah.
And you cannot trade through the weekend. And we get all kinds of new products that are global products. If you look, for example, to the voluntary credit, carbon credit market, which is a global market. Yeah? So at what time of the day can you trade these tokens? You want to trade these tokens 24/7. Yeah? So why should a farmer in Indonesia wait until the markets in Europe or the US open? Yeah? So it's a worldwide network that's available 24/7.
I think that 24/7 thing is very important, being able to get in and out of it. You know, typically in the traditional world, you can maybe do it in a day, but if you miss the cutoff window, you have to wait another day, and it's not happens at weekends. But another example, one more of innovation is the other thing. I mean, we have a crypto exchange as well, so you can go and trade ETH or Bitcoin or Algo on our exchange. But typically, you're trading against USD or USDC. We're going to launch pairs against a US dollar money market fund. So suddenly you've got an instrument where you put your order in the order book, it's sitting in the order book waiting to get hit. All your money is still earning yield in a regulated instrument until the trade takes place. You don't have to move it in and out of any other stable coin or currency or anything else. You've got a pair against a money market fund. And I think that's, you know, again, innovation makes things really exciting and interesting. So.
Yep.
I think that the ability to operate in after market hours is really powerful. It's like a whole new product when you are talking about generating yield and so on, and do settlements after market hours. I think that tokenization or our customers doesn't really care about how the token has been made. They only care about security. They care about to provide their customers the ability to have their token, to list their tokens really easily, and they don't even want to have another wallet, another app. So I think that the challenge is to integrate to those channels, to integrate to traditional market pipes, and that's what you guys are doing. We are doing that in Latin America, and like I would just say, the ability to operate after market hours in inflation markets like ours in Latin America is a key to our business. So I think that's one of the greatest things about tokenization, about real world asset tokenization. And of course the innovation and the ability to, now discussions with banks are not in terms of public networks or private networks. Now they are listening to us, they know what a blockchain is. So I think now is the time for us to take the responsibility to tokenize real world assets and to prove them that all the things that we have just said, they are true, that we can be cheaper than the traditional market, we can be more efficient, we can be more secure, and that's our opportunity for doing it. So I strongly think that.
And by the way, aside or beyond traditional financial products, I know, like Harry, for example, you guys are doing some stuff in payments with traditional companies that are starting to come to Eurodi as a way to be more efficient, more secure. What can you say about that?
So we, except for the, let's say, the financial products, we also work in other industries where traditional payment gateways simply don't work. Yeah? I started about the machine-to-machine payments. Machine don't have a bank account, they don't have a PayPal account, or they don't have a credit card, but you want to make a machine or a device a profit center. This is a bit of a paradigm shift. So until now, manufacturers of machines, take a washing machine as an example, they consider this washing machine as a cost center. So they manufacture the machine and it should be as cheap as possible, and they want to sell it, and the consumer buys the machine, and after 5 years the machine breaks down and it's too expensive to repair, so people buy another machine. Yeah? But if this machine becomes a profit center, its business model becomes different, because every time this washing machine is used, it contributes to the P&L of the manufacturer. And you need a different payment rail to enable a sustainable business model. And I'm always excited when I speak with clients about these models, because suddenly you realize that this new payment rail enables new business models, sustainable business models. So this is something that makes me excited as a person. And another way, if you look at public transport, I was in the Netherlands 2 weeks ago, and I went from the station to the office with the bus, and it cost €1.70, and I paid with my credit card. So no one is going to make a profit with this, yeah. And it's a loss for the public transport company, because they pay 15 cents to the payment service provider, and the margin of a public transport company is between 2% and 4%, because it may not be more. So it simply doesn't work. So how can we make public transport more, I won't say more profitable, yeah, but because at the end of the day we all pay for public transport. But how can you bring the transaction fee to zero? Yeah? These are the projects we work on. And again, you cannot do that with cryptos, you cannot do that with stable coins, you can only do that with digitalized money.
That's great. Any ideas on alternative assets that you are working on beside like the traditional?
Yeah, sure. So we are asset agnostic. It's about an interesting investment profile. But I think to your point in terms of like the social good, there's some really amazing green energy projects that really deserve that investment opportunity and for the investors to have that access to. So yeah, property is a big one. Private equity films has become a massive one too. In the wake of last year where you had Oppenheimer and Barbie, we did a piece about it in City AM, looking at kind of how can we provide access to investing in film is a really exciting profile, but also the fact that film funding is really, really challenging. It's why you have like free Jungle Books in 1 year from the studio. So that's a really exciting opportunity to open up more broadly, and I think helps to engage with the mass adoption conversation in terms of inviting people into more kind of exotic asset profiles, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we've worked on sort of, I mean, money market funds is one example. We've worked on all sorts of other interesting projects. I mean, you know, art is quite a famous one. I mean, I think, you know, way back in 2018, maybe it was, the Andy Warhol painting, 14 Electric Chairs, was tokenized. The owner held on to 51%, but sold 49%. So suddenly you could buy a piece of an Andy Warhol painting. And you might ask, well, why do that? Well, I mean, art has been one of the best performing asset classes over the years. I mean, it's so that's one reason. Second reason is this painting travels around the world being hung in galleries, and the galleries pay the owner, you know, to have the painting there. So you have an income stream from this painting. So you don't get to hang it on your wall, unfortunately, but at least you can say you own a piece of it and you get an income stream. Another example, shipping. I mean, the big container ships that move around the world carrying cargo from port to port. You know, we're talking to a company that runs those container ships. You know, they're hugely expensive things to run, so they're tokenizing part of the fleet. So you can buy into this shipping service, and you get your share of the income they earn from shipping stuff around the world. The company that owns the ships suddenly gets some money back because they've sold part of their fleet, or a percentage of their fleet, so they can reinvest in new ships and the like. So, you know, it's kind of, again, this kind of innovation, I think, is hugely exciting. Possibly the most unusual example is someone tokenizing frozen racehorse semen. Now, I bet you weren't going to think anyone would say that word today on stage, but apparently that is a massive thing in the Middle East. In the Middle East, in particular, racehorses are prized and trained, and you know the champion racehorses, they do actually take their semen and freeze it, and it becomes something that people want to buy and sell and keep and use. So why not tokenize it? Why not get a value from it? So I think, you know, this whole innovation covers everything you could imagine. I mean, I think your example of film carries on into other, like music rights, film rights, music rights, people selling their future sporting earnings in return for money now. I mean, you know, it's fascinating, and they're all real-world assets.
Now, I think one of the other markets is the disruption of the mic is, yeah? Is the disruption of the leasing market. Yeah? So if you lease planes or ships, your containers, you can build, or you can rebuild the leasing industry because you tokenize the asset, and you have investors investing in a plane, a container ship, or whatsoever, and they get the revenue on a pay-per-use basis. So it's not a linear lease anymore, but it's based on pay-per-use, and this is, I think, a very nice market that you can approach with digitizing the asset and financing through a new pay-per-use scheme.
And Henry, you mentioned earlier regulation. To what extent this panel thinks it's been difficult to deal with regulators, or it's actually an advantage to have a regulated business? Is it a challenge? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think regulation is always a challenge, but we didn't address the investor or consumer protection yet. So I think if I'll get back again to the MyCar. it's there to protect consumers and investor and avoid the crypto schemes we've seen over the past years. Yeah, it still might happen, but if you commit fraud, you issue tokens without any value, although you published a very nice white paper, you end up in prison. Yeah, so currently there are no penalties. Yeah? But once we have the regulation in place, I think there will be a much better protection for investors, for consumers, and I think what we've learned from the past is that this brings an inflow of money into the market.
Yeah, I mean, I think regulation is key, but there's a number of aspects of that. I mean, the regulator, where you get regulated, is key as well. I mean, you said earlier that you decided to get regulated in the Netherlands rather than maybe a smaller peripheral jurisdiction where it's easier. And similar for us, I mean, we looked at getting regulated in smaller jurisdictions, which is fine. You can go and get regulated there. But the trouble is, if you really want to attract the big names, like we have Aberdeen, BlackRock and people, they're not going to go and work with a firm that's regulated in a small jurisdiction, basically. So that's why we did it in the UK. And in fact, we're getting regulated in the Netherlands as well, so that we're part of the EU. Because post-Brexit, obviously, we don't belong anymore. But so we've had to get regulated there. But regulation is tough. I mean, it took us 2 full years to get regulated. I didn't have any grey hair at the start, and look at me now. So, it is tough getting regulated. It takes time and effort and money. But once you get it, you have an edge over everyone else. I mean, no one else has the same regulation we have. So we have a huge window of opportunity, which is really interesting. But also, regulation is complicated because in the crypto digital asset space, there's a lot of confusion in some jurisdictions over regulation. I mean, you just have to look at the US market. I mean, it's a nightmare there at the moment as to how it's going to pan out. I mean, in the UK, it's pretty clear, which is good. In the EU, we have MiCA, which is pretty good as well. So some clarity is coming, but there's still a way to go. And another challenge is kind of regulatory consistency. And a good example of that is in the UK, I mean, crypto spot is an unregulated instrument. You don't need any regulation to handle it, to be an exchange or whatever. But crypto derivatives are regulated. If you go to Singapore, MAS, another credible regulator, it's the opposite way around. Spot is regulated, derivatives aren't. So as well as kind of, you have to negotiate this complex matrix of different regulatory interpretations from regulators around the world. So I think, in terms of what are the barriers to real-world assets coming on chain and getting tokenized, one of them is regulation. We need regulatory clarity and regulatory consistency.
Do we want to take any questions from the audience if anyone has anything they wish to ask the panel? Is there a mic? Can we give a mic there? Or if you want to shout. Yeah. So how do we see the next 5-10 years?
Well, I think it's a really interesting. Is my mic still working?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. A really interesting time in the financial landscape, particularly investing. We're about to see the biggest hand down of wealth from boomers to millennials. I believe the stat is right that it's 84 trillion in the US alone. So that really shows the scale of what's about to happen. But also these investors aren't investing the same way as their parents or their grandparents before them. So I think tokenization will play an incredible role, both in this context, but more widely. And I think we're just getting started with that. I think in our work at Control Alt, we see a lot of banks, the innovation teams that are really looking to prepare for this next generation of investors. And I think in the next few years, we're really going to start to see that trickle down.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you kind of look at the last few years, I think every year for the last 4 or 5 years, everyone has said this is the year of real-world asset tokenization or digital securities or security tokens, whatever the term of the time is. Every year was going to be the year, and it's never really happened. And now we're saying this is the year. And I do believe we've kind of reached a pivot point now. And if you look back, there have been many institutions getting involved in this space, but it's just been kind of proof of concepts. They've just been dipping a toe in the water, trying some things out. But now real things are happening. I mean, the transaction we announced today, that's a real thing happening. The fact that people like Aberdeen and BlackRock are getting involved, that's hugely exciting. It shows institutional involvement. So we've kind of moved from the proof of concept stage to the real world projects around real world assets. And I think that's a sign that momentum is building. So then looking forwards over the next 5 years, I just think we're going to see more and more assets coming on chain. As soon as people see the innovation opportunities that are available, as soon as people see how you can open up a whole new investor base to assets that can't get access currently, it'll snowball and really go fast. So I think, it's probably going to, these things, as Stacey said at the beginning, these things do take time and move slowly, but we really see momentum building now, and I think the next 5 years are going to be very exciting.
If I may add to that, yesterday there was a graph about how many people in countries already own cryptocurrencies. And I think it was in the US, it was about 20%, Switzerland 15%. So there is already an audience that has gained experience with cryptocurrencies over the past 10 years. Yeah? So it's not new. So they know how cryptos work, how they have mobile phones with apps. If I look at my children, for example, one of my children suddenly had bear coins, and they exploded. Yeah? So he became a rich guy overnight. And so this is a new generation that never will go to a traditional savings bank. Yeah? They do their banking with neobanks online, and crypto assets is something that's there, that they knew from from Sandbox times on. So there is already an audience that can work with these assets.
Yes, I think that the audience for like OGs and DeFi protocols and so it's gonna grow, but I think that it will take at least a decade for everything to become real DeFi. So we are now in the middle of that. I think now is the time, like I said before, for us to build the rails between the financial institutions, the regulated financial institutions. That is by being regulated as well with the traditional banking pipes. And I think that, of course, in the future, I do see a lot of DeFi applications, and this audience really growing. And like you say, your kid is never going to go to a traditional bank savings bank account to deposit the like cash money. But I do think that we are at the middle of that path. So.
Do we want to see if there is any more questions?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So on the topic of RWA tokenization, we work in the domain of real estate assets, right? My question is, right now it's just about giving a certain set of tokens to end users who are investing, but what we anticipate is over time, there will be several number of exchanges that will need to be built custom to the kind of asset that you have. I mean, we have seen exchanges for commodity trading and so on. So let's say if it's real estate, or tomorrow if it's trading in green energy or green power, I mean, how do you see the future evolving in that sense? I mean, will these exchanges be typically private, or will it be a private / a government partnership or private-public enterprises where you have to secure interests of the investors, the end users, and typically we have seen many countries, if there is a little bit of government backing, then such solutions sort of end up going to the mainstream versus if there's a single private or a large player driving such exchanges.
Yeah, I guess I talk a little about our plan. I mean, we're a centralized exchange based and regulated in London, soon be regulated in the Netherlands. We're looking at the Middle East. We're looking at Asia. So, our vision is to be a global marketplace, and that will be some of it organically, some of it working with others. Centralized exchange for the moment, and to be honest, you have to be a centralized exchange to get regulated at the minute. If we tried to get regulated as a DEX, it would never have happened. But we do believe that DeFi and DEXs are the future, but not solely that. It's probably a combination. I think some things are very suited to the DeFi world, and other things are probably suited to a centralized world. And particularly regulators. I mean, regulators like to have someone on the hook for when something goes wrong. And in the sort of DeFi world, that's a challenge. So, we see some kind of hybrid model where it's kind of a mix of the two. And I think it'll be a mix of markets as well. I mean, you know, as I say, we're a real world asset marketplace. We're not focused on any particular asset, underlying asset particularly. I mean, at the minute, funds is where we're seeing a lot of traction, so that's where we have a focus at the moment. But we see us having sort of separate markets within our exchange, so there might be one for funds, one for real estate, one for, you know, other types of underlying asset. But then I think also like tokenizing groups of assets, so you create these kind of synthetic instruments to give you exposure to a whole range of other things. I think they are really interesting, and being able to trade those and use those in different ways. I think one myth I'd like to get rid of, though, is that there is sometimes a belief that as soon as you tokenize something, it becomes magically liquid and you can trade it all the time. That is simply not the case. You know, you can't create liquidity from nothing. What tokenization can do, though, is unlock liquidity. So maybe there's liquidity locked up at the minute, it's difficult to access it. Tokenizing can free up that liquidity, make it available. But it's not going to suddenly magic, and you're not going to be able to trade a tokenized building, you know, 20 times a second. You know, it just doesn't work like that. But it can improve liquidity. I think that's the key thing.
I think our time is up. Thanks very much to our panelists and to our audience for your interest.